So SNL's 50th anniversary is next year. So are you going to take over for Lorne, or is it Tina and then you?
I really don't. I think this is a false narrative that Lorne is going anywhere.
Oh.
I think that, look, 9 years or the 40th, I think it made sense for Lorne, who's got a flair for the dramatic, to say, I think I'll be done at 50.
Yeah.
But now it's not like Lorne's got something else he wants to do more than this.
So you think it's Kenan?
I think it's Kenan.
I remember reading, I think in the SNL book, one of them, like Jim Brewer, basically, maybe in the 90s, just being like, Farrell came in and McKay, and like they didn't like me, and like then I wasn't part of the inside group or whatever. And I was totally related to that, even though I've never been a part of that, of like, yeah, that's what happens in groups. Yes. I had that in my college improv group.
It happens in groups all the time. With that said, I remember when Will first hosted, and so I had overlapped with him for a year when he came back and hosted, and that meeting between Dress and Air where they're picking the sketches.
Yeah.
Will had a moment of, because it was just what was funniest, what played. Yeah. And I think everybody assumes, who's not in the room, that there's a little bit more, I like this person, but it's a little bit more of a meritocracy in a good way.
I'm guessing you always roughly felt like you were in the group within the group at the show, because you were head writer, you were like...
Eventually, but
not
year
at first?
7? Not at all.
No way. Year 7?
Well, I was a struggling cast member for 5 years. I felt more on the outside than...
Oh my gosh.
Maybe anybody. I mean, it really was. So, I mean, I'm not like being hard on myself. I was barely staying alive as a cast member on that show until I think year 5 or 6 was when Tina left, and or she was on the process of leaving to do,
right?
Finally, to do 30 Rock, and Lorne asked if I would step in, and I wasn't even a credited writer on the show, and he sort of said, we'd love for you to take over as one of the writing supervisors on the show, and then the next year I was a head writer.
I mean, moment of silence.
Moment of silence.
That's crazy.
I then realized about a year later, he was also doing this because he didn't want me on camera at all. I think his plan was, look at you, valuable writer.
Well, interestingly, that's sort of Tim Robinson's path too. I mean, he didn't end up being head writer, but Tim Robinson was a cast member on the show.
Yep.
And actually was great as a cast member.
He really was.
And then at a certain point, Lorne was like, I'd actually prefer if you were a writer.
Basically after the first season.
Yeah. And then he's a writer. He writes really good sketches.
He does. And I think to Tim's eternal credit, found peace with that shift, because I think that's the hardest part to deal with, is that, I was a cast member, now they want me to just be a writer. And Tim, I've talked to him about it, he said he found joy in being a writer on the show, which is really great.
Well, everybody always says about him who worked with him when he was a writer that he wasn't stressed at all.
Right, the hard part.
Right,
yeah.
He had kind of been demoted in a certain sense from being a cast member to a writer, and so he was just like, yeah, what are you going to do to me? Fire me? And so he kind of swung away.
It was also great. He swung away, and I loved seeing Tim in my post SNL years. For the first 2 or 3 years when I had late night, maybe not even that long, because I realized nobody actually wanted to see me. I would go
What do you mean?
I finished taping on Thursday would be my last show. So we do 4 shows a week. And I finished on Thursday, and I'd walk over to SNL. The way I've always described it is I felt like I was a plastic surgeon who was walking into the ER being like, hey, you guys, anybody here golfing this weekend? And they're like, get out of here. My vibe.
To give the setup, people, you're on literally the same floor.
Literally the same floor.
You walk out the door of your makeup room and you're on the floor of SNL.
It's very strange. It's as if I went to college next door to my high school. And I just realized, and so my week, the cresting though was different. Like Thursday, right as I'm like, they're like, and so it was not. It's hard to find a good time to match those vibes up. Except what I loved about seeing Timmy was he had that joy about working there, and he also. This was another thing that Mike O'Brien, I remember, pointed out once. You would go...
The writer, Mike O'Brien. Yeah,
writer and comedian Mike O'Brien. There were weeks where the SNL host was really difficult, and you could tell they were really difficult.
We don't have to talk about Justin Bieber.
We won't talk about anybody, but you would walk down the hallway and you'd see people, the tension and the rage at the host.
Yeah, sure.
And I remember Mike once, he'd left as well, and we were just sitting, and he was saying to all of them, look, you guys you have it all wrong. This is the one you'll always talk about. Like, you're going to always talk. 10 years from now, you will have more good memories and good stories about this terrible host than you will about somebody, Look, Paul Rudd is going to do an exceptional show, and he's a great hang. But like 10 years from now, you're not going to talk about the crazy Thursday when Paul Rudd had this crazy idea. And so I like that Mike was trying to impart that wisdom of, the bad weeks are also great weeks here.
Yeah, I love that. And what's interesting is like, to close the loop on Tim Robinson's like, and then his sketch show, I Think You Should Leave, we all I think love as comedians.
Perfect. It's a perfect
sketch comedy show, and probably wouldn't have existed if he weren't a writer on SNL all those years, or he weren't a cast member. Like, I mean, it's all part of it.
It is all part of it, and I again want to keep going back to he did kind of keep his. He had an optimism and hopefulness about a really bad thing that I think could crush other people's ego.
I always quote you as saying this when I talk about SNL because I'm in love with it. I'm in love with the whole idea of it. And I probably misquote you, but you always say something to the effect of every week, and it's always been this way, there's great sketches, there's terrible sketches, there's decent sketches.
Yeah.
And it will always be that way. It's the nature of the show. Is that sort of the paraphrase?
I think that's about right.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately 3 great sketches makes a great show because it's really hard. I think that's enough. If I was there for 12 and a half years and you said, what was the show that had nothing bad? I think the first time Maya Rudolph came back and hosted, there wasn't anything bad in the show. But that also is built off the backs of her being one of the most, enduring, multifaceted SNL cast members of all time. So it certainly helped. But there are every show's got a stinker. I mean, The Wire would not be as good of a show if they had a week to do each episode, like to write it, And so the shows that we all go back and we binge over and over again, they took the right amount of time. And so SNL, part of the reason like the most brilliant things come out of it is also because there was no time to say maybe this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so it works as an alchemy, but there's a reason that individual sketches live on for years and years and years more than individual episodes.
I found out I didn't even realize. I was on Late Night, which by the way, congrats, 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
Crazy.
What a trip, man.
I was the 7th guest.
Look at you.
I was the 7th episode of the show.
Wow.
And
what do we think? 10 times? How many times do you think?
A lot of times.
Yeah.
I mean, enough times that I have all the mugs and the shirts, and it pretty much makes out.
You know what is interesting about 10 years is they give you like 12 logos.
Yeah.
And you just pick one. And then that's just the logo forever.
Yeah.
And it's really funny to look at it because I still like it, but I like it for the same way I like a lot of things that I like, which is not a big swing. It's just a nice logo you're not going to get tired of.
Yeah, it's like working it out. It's like, how long is it going to be this? Just my handwriting, working it out?
I don't think you're ever going to get sick of it.
Really?
I don't think you will.
It's funny, like, one of the things about your show that's changed, I think you and I could both have seen this coming, is Fred Armisen was the drummer, and then like Fred Armisen's kind of not around that much.
Yeah, he's barely the drummer. But then it's really exciting. It is that thing of I feel bad for, when spouses get divorced and one spouse is in charge of like raising the kids.
Yeah.
And they're just around every day. And then the other spouse, comes in for like a week, a month, and everybody's like, yeah, he's the fun one. Because Fred comes in. And he is the band leader on the show.
Yeah.
Barely there. But he comes in and it's like the best week of the month. Because Fred is also funny in a way that no one else is funny.
So who, in all of your years of working with all of these writers and cast members on SNL, who's the person who is funnier than even their reputation, even if their reputation is big?
I mean, Fred's pretty close. And so much of what he has done that's funny is inappropriate to share.
Yes.
Fred used to do a bit for basically a month at SNL where he would come to the table read on Wednesday and just go, I can't believe I'm going to be the voice of all the Simpsons characters. And it was just, and he would just be like just a guy who was just taking in how life-changing it was. And then the bit would be, we would all be so proud of him. And I didn't even know you did the voices. Fred, do you do a Homer? And he would go, oh no. And just do slightly wrong. Like slightly wrong. Homie. Oh no. And just killer bit. Just a killer bit. Sandberg is Sandberg is America's little brother.
Yeah.
And
beloved.
Just beloved. And just that little brother, Needle. I've told this story so many times. I apologize if anyone's heard me, but my favorite, because when I first met Sandberg, I thought, oh, he's juvenile and he's not my style.
Yeah.
He seems like a perfectly nice person, but comedy-wise,
yeah.
I don't think we're going to vibe much. And completely won me over. I believe he's one of the smartest comedians with the most pristine taste. But he would come to my office at 2 a.m. on writing night. And he would just like poke his head in and go, hey, I'm going to the bathroom. You want to come with? And I'd say, I don't want to come with. And I'd be like, it's a really long walk. I'd love the company. You want to come with? And I'd be like, I don't want to come with. And then I had a frosted glass door and he would close the door, but then he would just stand there so you could see his silhouette. And he would just like breathe for a long time. Right? And it was so unnerving, just as close to the glass. And yeah, I mean, in general, to go back to what I was saying about how even failing at SNL has a value. Like, I do think I was there for one of the best periods of it.
Oh my God.
As far as just the talent and watching the wigs and haters and Fortes of the world succeed was thrilling. Watching them fail was equally thrilling because you were just watching people you knew were better at it than anyone.
Yeah.
Miss. And it was so just, I get to take that with me because you're like, oh, nobody is good all the time.
Yes.
And sometimes one of the ways to being great is, you know, the lessons you learn by the near misses.
So one time when I was on late night, the other guest was Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, that's an interesting time.
Yeah. And I remember thinking like, I don't know if I could do Seth's job because I would feel like, and you had this, I think, with Biden this week to some degree, it's like, well, I have to be tough. I have to ask. I mean, it's a comedy show.
It's a little of both, right?
It's a comedy show, so it's entertainment. So, you know, they know it's a softball interview to an extent, but at the same time, I have to be somewhat real and rigid and ask some tough questions.
The New York Times, that one, wrote they wrote about the Biden interview, and it's nice words where I was like, oh, I wouldn't have said that's what we're aiming for, but they said the interview was playful but pointed, and I'm like, oh, that's a good way to describe what you're trying to do. But they're less fun. Like, politicians are less fun. I also should say, you know, we had, I think, almost every Republican candidate but Donald Trump in 2016. And one of the few things we could agree on, be it with Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham or anyone like that, is how Donald Trump was a disaster and a threat to this country. Like that, back then, that's what they agreed with as well, you know?
Lindsey Graham,
Ted Cruz. Like, we talked about how Donald Trump was a bad guy.
Right.
And so that was sort of the thing that we could be like, at least, you know, we have differing opinions, but we can agree on this. And of course, now you can't have those people back on because they wouldn't agree with you on that. And so there's no value to it.
They moved the goalpost on him for sure.
100%. So then what's the point? Because now you don't feel like there's any overlap with what you believe as a human being.
That's a strange one.
It's strange. And by the way, it's also no great loss. I always said the funniest thing about having politicians on is you would say, you know, now, please welcome. He's a candidate for the next president of the United States. Please welcome. And, you know, Democrat or Republican, you know, there was a giant field, for example, in the last 2 Democratic primaries, right? Or I guess not. In 2020, there was a giant field. And the audience would get so excited. They're like, oh, my God, I might be here in a night where I'm seeing the next president.
Right.
And then like 3 minutes into the interview, you just watch them sit back like, this person's not going to be president. You know? They believed me when I said they're running for president. And then they just would collectively. So there's no great loss when I think our show talking about politics is interesting. Our show talking to politicians, less so. By the way, all politicians have like, this is, you know what you should do? You should do this for politicians who are like, every time Chuck Schumer goes on a talk show, I got 3 jokes I'm going to do. You're like, you don't have to do all 3.
Oh my God.
There are certain politicians, Lindsey Graham's another one. They come with 3 jokes. They're going to tell them no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what question you ask, they will like spin it back around.
Yeah, of course.
And
I hate that.
Oh, it's just that. It's politicians with jokes, man, oh man.
Oh.
Politicians being funny is great, but when they're like a joke that somebody on their staff wrote.
I want to do the drinking on your show.
The day drinking?
Yeah.
I think you'd be bad at it, right?
Yes. I'm very bad at drinking, but that's why I think it might be funny.
Maybe, but that's definitely leaning away from what we like about it. You don't strike me. Well, maybe. I don't know. We've known each other a long time.
We've never drank together. We've just had lunch.
Have we told this story ever about when we were meeting for lunch and
About
Bradley Cooper?
We should tell that.
I was waiting for you outside for lunch, right? And so while I was waiting there, Bradley Cooper walked up and I was talking with Bradley. And then you walked up and it was, my memory is like the most beautiful woman in the world walked by and like almost fell down when she saw Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, he's a handsome man.
He really is.
Yeah.
I was once on a hike in France, like an Alps hike with my wife and my brother and his fiance, and a French family asked if I would take their picture. So I took the camera and took it. And as they were walking, this is just a true story, Mike. I don't know what, and the segue made sense.
Yeah.
But then one of the French people said to another French person, that was Bradley Cooper about me.
Oh, that's
and my
nice.
brother was like, that's a crazy exchange rate.
No, so Bradley, so the woman he's a real head turner, that Bradley.
That's what it was. It was to watch a physical head turn.
So you and I ran into him on the street. You know him, I don't. And you introduced me, and then I go, hey, I'm Mike, and I'm a comedian. I went to Georgetown around the same time you did. And he goes, all right. And it was just full blow off. And I was just like, well, that wasn't what I was hoping for. But, I guess he meets a lot of people.
Right. Were you expecting him to sort of break into the Georgetown fight song with you?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Look, there's best case scenarios and worst case scenarios, that was somewhere in between. But you do have that kind of thing in your mind. I mean, I feel like over the years when I meet celebrities, I've lowered and lowered my expectations, so that I'm pretty grounded. This is not going to lead anywhere.
But now, again, you are also a celebrity, and I'm going to say that if somebody said the same thing to you, you would be lovely.
Thanks for saying that, and I'll give that compliment back to you. And interestingly, like you are, I feel like not just to me, you're nice. You've always been nice to me. We've known each other for probably 15 years or plus, maybe longer. You're nice. Everyone I talk to who works with you really likes you personally. Is that from like your mom? Is it from your dad? Like, where does that come from? Because that's got to come from somewhere deep.
I think my parents are very nice people, and I think they did not suffer bad behavior from their children. With that said, I think one of the core drivers of my kindness over the last, let's say, 15 years is I feel so lucky with how things have broken for me. I don't want to be. I find bad winners to be insufferable. I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm a winner, but like I got, when the thing I wanted the most was Update, right? I wanted Update so badly.
Try to walk back that you're not a winner. I don't think I'm a winner. Yeah, you are. That's the moral of the story.
I didn't want to come out being like, look, winners win. But
No, you've done well, and you don't want to be a kind of annoying jerk.
So when I got, again, all I wanted was Update. I got Update, and then it gave me, and I don't think I was a bad person to work with before that, but my take on my whole experience at SNL after that is like, I'm going to just try to make everybody as happy as I feel right now.
That's nice. Yeah. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
So SNL's 50th anniversary is next year. So are you going to take over for Lorne, or is it Tina and then you?
I really don't. I think this is a false narrative that Lorne is going anywhere.
Oh.
I think that, look, 9 years or the 40th, I think it made sense for Lorne, who's got a flair for the dramatic, to say, I think I'll be done at 50.
Yeah.
But now it's not like Lorne's got something else he wants to do more than this.
So you think it's Kenan?
I think it's Kenan. That's my way of saying I think it's Kenan.
I mean, how long has Kenan's been on 20, right?
It's crazy.
He's 20, right?
20. Yeah, 20. Yeah, he started in 2003. He started my second year, and it's 20 years.
How the world has changed. It used to be when someone was on for 7 years, they go, that guy's been on forever.
Oh, I know.
Kevin Nealon was on for, I think, 11 years or something. Everyone's like, that's forever.
I think that it's unique to Kenan because Kenan is somehow still given new looks.
Yeah.
His
looks are priceless.
Yeah, he's not the same vibe for 20 years.
He's got Kenan. I think the thing about Kenan that makes him such a good cast member is that he's so loose.
He's so loose. Also,
on a show that can feel tight, there's cue cards.
Yes.
You got to hit your mark.
Also, there's this crazy thing that, Mike, you and I don't have.
Uh-oh.
Kenan still seems young.
No,
you know what
right.
I mean? 20 years, he still seems young.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Kenan and I haven't that in common, but you...
Yeah, I do not.
You're a hard 50.
I'm
I mean,
hard.
me and Kenan are looking good.
You're looking great. They were like...
threw both of us under the bus.
Yeah, the new one, when I heard the title, I was like, that's about Mike, because he's always seems new. Yeah, but Kenan, well, I mean, the alchemy of Kenan Thompson is just remarkable.
You started with him, right?
I was 2 years before him. Yeah, so I was 01. I was 01 with Polar. Then Fred and Forte were 02.
Yeah.
And then Kenan was 03.
Wow. You had a podcast that's great, Strike Force 5. You have two podcasts now, actually, because you have Family Trips also, but which is also great. But Strike Force 5, it was you and the other late night hosts raising money for the strike.
Yes,
for people,
for
crews during the strike who weren't working. A lot of whispers and murmurs that you were the funniest of the bunch.
Oh, are there?
You ever hear that?
No, I never heard that.
Oh, come on.
I mean, I would Google
Be
my
honest.
name.
No.
I was very
false humility.
I found my way. I think the nice thing about that podcast was
Have you heard this?
I haven't heard it. No.
I'm the first person telling you.
Look, I'm very flattered because you have great taste, and so I'll assume if you're saying it, everyone has. No,
You're doing a pose I've never even seen. This is lying pose. You've heard this. You're lying.
I was
because multiple people have said this to me.
That's great to
hear.
They
go, who do you think's the funniest on the show? I go, I think they're all really funny. They go, I think Seth Meyers is the funniest. I hear that a lot.
Well, it's incredibly flattering.
It's a funny bunch of folks.
It's a funny bunch of folks.
Yeah.
I thought, you know what? I thought Fallon, you and I
Fallon's
both know,
hilarious.
but we know Fallon. I think there's a version of Fallon that, and he's super funny on his show, but there's a different version of Fallon was on that podcast that I think you and I know a little bit better, that I was so happy that people got to hear.
Fallon is so funny, and Fallon's got like a little bit of like Robin Williams in him.
Yes,
Like, he'll go anywhere.
And that was my experience of like the first, when we overlapped at SNL, like his...
You and Fallon.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 years. He has a kinetic bit energy where it is, very Robin Williams, like zigging and zagging, improvisational flair that is really impressive to watch up close.
Who was in that group, who was the easiest to work with? Who's the hardest to work with? Kimmel, Fallon, Oliver...
I mean, to work with seems like a weird way
Colbert.
of saying it. I would say the podcast, which I think in the end was really fun and good. The first
great.
couple of episodes, I felt as though it was either a basketball team with 5 point guards or, to be less fair, a football team with 5 quarterbacks where nobody could catch, run, or block.
Yes.
We had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And by 3 we did. And part of it was just, we all knew each other, and I think we were all friendly.
Yeah.
But it took a few before we went from friendly to friends, and I think the difference is friends can tease each other without worrying the other person's going to take it personally.
Yeah.
And so there was almost a little too polite for 2 episodes because 5 comedians being polite feels like really inauthentic.
Right.
And so once we started ragging on each other for boring stories or dumb bits or bad sound or weird lighting, like it just, that I think is when it became more enjoyable to listen to.
You, and years ago, in an interview, you were saying that you find them, of all the things you do, because you do so many things, you find the most joy in writing.
Yeah.
My question is like, how do you find the time? You have 3 kids, you have a talk show, and you produce like 5 different shows. Sometimes we'll have lunch and I've never experienced this with anyone. It'll be an hour, and at like 59 minutes and 45 seconds, you will be gone. It'll be a puff of smoke. You will be gone. I've never met someone as scheduled as you in my life. Is this real? Can you verify this?
Yes, because I would love a long lunch is the dream. So, but I think a lot of our lunches were SNL days.
Yeah.
And so I was really scheduled. But I also have a real good internal clock.
Is that true?
I walked on stage the last time I did stand up. I was aiming to do an hour, and I recorded it. And I was just going, internal clock stopped it. It was an hour and 6 seconds. I was like, pretty good.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. I can wake up in the middle of the night, and I feel as though guess within 5 minutes what time it is before I look at my phone.
That's interesting.
I'll sort of say, I think it's 2:40, like that kind of thing.
Where does that come from? It's just baked in.
Just baked in. I mean, it's not, as skills go, it's not that cool or impressive.
When you look at like the old, like, because you and I probably grew up both on like Carson and Letterman.
Yeah.
When you look at those guys, they were older guys.
Right.
You know, and it's like, do you see yourself as like a 70-year-old man hosting late night or a talk show?
I don't. But at the same time, I never saw myself as a 50-year-old man, and I am. So ultimately, like, who knows?
Yeah.
There's that weird thing too, which is they feel like old guys, but I think I was certainly older when I started late night probably than Letterman was. I mean, I was 40 when I started.
Right, and he was like 27 or 28 or something.
There's that. Yeah. I think my friend Neil Brennan
sent that around. The old people, the
Wilburys.
The traveling Wilburys.
Yeah.
They were like 30.
The oldest.
And they look like they're 50.
Yeah, I think maybe Roy Orbison was the only one in his 40s.
Is that just Neil Brennan who sent that around to a bunch of us? Like,
Neil told. Now I feel like it's a meme. But Neil's a meme starter. I think he told me he was the guy who put the years on it. I don't know.
Neil Brennan is a mutual friend of ours. I don't think he sleeps. I think he's texting with comedians 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And always watching things, absorbing. No one in my life has ever said, did you see the new Frontline on? It's like, Frontline? Like, I have nothing but love for Frontline, but if there was one Frontline a year, I'd catch up on Frontlines.
Oh, that's so funny. This is the slow round. What are people's favorite and least favorite thing about you?
What are people's favorite and least favorite thing? I would like to think I get points for loyalty. I'm also very nice to people's friends and family.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. If you're my friend, I will be so nice to your friends.
I can vouch for that. You came to my girlfriend's boyfriend opening night party in 2011. And my siblings are huge fans of yours, and like you just like hung out all night and like took photos, and it was like super, super nice.
I should also note I genuinely like people. I tend to like the extension of my friends, so it's a good bet that I will then like their friends.
So you have loyalty, and then what's people's least favorite thing?
What is people's least favorite thing? I can be a little, but I'm not at work. I shouldn't make stress, but can be a little. I guess short-tempered.
Oh.
Yeah, I can be a little short-tempered.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Can you think of an example?
I can only tell you that I was in a car with my two sons and one of their friends, and I was becoming frustrated. And my oldest son said to his friend, "Oh, watch this. My dad's about to lose it. It's so funny." And that's heartbreaking. Because then you realize, not one, I've done it enough that it's predictable. And two, it's not effective at all, because they're not like, "Oh, God." They're like, "Oh, don't miss this."
That is so funny.
Heartbreaking.
That's a bit, though, for sure. Have you done that as a bit?
I haven't done that as a bit.
That's a perfect example of a bit.
Yeah.
Of something that should be a bit. What's the time that you lied and you got away with it or didn't get away with it?
I remember I was really lazy in high school. I feel I would like test well and then get really bad grades. And my dad had great fear, justifiable fear, that I was going to waste the opportunity to make the most of myself. And I remember I got an F in science in 8th grade and kept not bringing. It's not even a lie. I knew eventually the rubber was going to hit the road, but I kept saying the teacher hadn't given me my report card yet because they were changing something. And my mom, I should know, this is why this was a terrible plan, was a teacher at the school. And she was like, "Why don't you have your report card?" And I said, "I'm still haven't. Mrs. Kent is changing. I don't know." And I kept doing this
thing.
You
had it.
I had it, and it was an F, and I had tried. This is the worst part.
A full F.
A full F that I tried to change to an A, then realized that was insane, and then erased it. But my parents could tell that I had tried.
Wow.
And my dad, he was so mad at me. He said, "You thought you could change it to an A, and then what?
And then what?
No one would ever." And then I had to say, I obviously didn't do that. And he said, "You tried. You only realized you were so dumb you had to try before you realized it was dumb."
That's also a potential bit. I mean, that's a great.
This is I feel like I've told my Mrs. Kent was our science teacher, and I remember that when we had sex ed, she was.
You took a long time between sex and ed.
Yeah, but when we had sex.
I remember when we had sex.
Ed was there. My friend Ed was there. She was showing us how to put on a condom, and she took out. It was looked like one of the things you put paper towels on, like that. She goes, and she literally put it. She goes, "I'm going to show you it on a condom," and she goes, "This is the size of a male or erect male penis," and it was so tall. And it was dead silence, and one guy in the back just went, "Uh-oh."
That was in sex ed?
That was in sex ed.
Is it? And what grade was that? 8th grade?
8th grade, yeah.
My God.
8th grade, very matter of fact. This giant wooden dowel.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh. It was the great, we always said, it was the greatest thing, because every one of us was thinking, well, mine, and then the let us all know. Okay. She's in the wrong.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That, can you remember a time in your life where you were an inauthentic version of yourself?
Oh yeah. I will say that my first few years on SNL, I tried very hard to be I didn't realize it. The outcome of my efforts was to be a worse version than people they already had on the show. As opposed to trying to do what I could do maybe better than anybody else.
I love that.
I was trying to, you guys like Jimmy Fallon? What about a C- Jimmy Fallon?
Right.
Well, you already have the regular one.
Right.
So there was a lot of that.
So in other words, you would do impressions and characters and
yes,
things
or
that you weren't.
Here's a really good example of a bad instinct. It's funny when Will Ferrell yells. I'll do scenes where I yell. Maybe one of the only people who's funny yelling is Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
The great comedy yeller.
He is.
And I actually think I wasn't the only person negatively influenced by the yelling of Will Ferrell. Because there was, I think, a generation of screaming comedy that was worse than when Will did it.
Cast members after him.
I think in movies. I think there was a lot of people trying to do.
Tim Robinson's a good yeller.
But it's been a huge gap of time.
Yeah.
Between. Yeah. Because it has to be, it works when it's sort of it can't be like alpha yelling. It has to be that beta, that comedy move of a beta who thinks they're an alpha.
That's why Will Ferrell works as a yeller, for sure.
And Tim Robinson. Like
Tim Robinson, yeah. Because Will Ferrell is a big teddy bear.
Yes. Whereas, and Will's different because Tim's different because he's not teddy bear. He's just like a totally neutered, like every one of his characters. No, they internally know who they are, and they're trying to prove an opposite.
He almost seems like his characters seem like a shell of a person who's yelling as a last resort.
It's right. It's where every sketch is someone's last stand.
That is great analysis of I Think You Should Leave.
Yeah. It's every character's Alamo you're watching in real time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. What's the best piece of advice you've been given that you used?
It's a long life. Every time I was really angry at SNL and wanted to have it out with someone, Mike Shoemaker, I remember his take was, it's a long life.
Oh, wow. His
thing too was this group of people, it's very intense, but if played right, and if you don't follow through on every instinct of when you've been wronged, the bad things will fall away, and everybody you're mad at will be at your wedding.
Wow. That's super deep.
Yes.
I mean, I think that applies, of course, not just to sketch comedy writing, but to life in so many ways. Because think about how many times a month someone does something towards you that is lame and awful, and you just gotta you got to parse through. Well, what can I get around now for the larger picture of this, and what is actually endemic to a larger thing that's going to be full obstacle?
You should stand up for yourself. It's not that.
Yes.
It's just sometimes when you're high pressure crucible situation, something happens and there's not enough time to actually speak about what happened to you in a loving way. And you're like, I'm going to go to that person's office right now. And then those are the ones that's the thing that takes years to recover from.
What bits do you have that are kind of half baked or new? Or
I like British crime shows. I think the reason I like them is the murder weapon's almost never a gun.
I like that.
It's like a hammer.
Yeah.
It's like there's been another hammering. This is a bit I've done, and I feel like it's almost there.
Okay.
Right? Which is, can I say something real quick in defense of serial killers? And I want to say I'm not a fan of anything they do but this part. And I certainly hate all the killing they do and the fact that they do it so many that it's considered a series. But in this day and age, when we're moving so fast and everything is email and text, I think it's really nice that they leave a note.
Oh, that's funny.
And they're always very polite notes.
Stay in touch.
It's always like, Dear Detective, the press has been very unkind to you. It's just nice. And then, look, I know a lot of people would be like, what about kidnappers? But their notes are always so impersonal, and they're just cut out from magazines.
Right.
And it's a lot of be here at this time, and it's just none of it.
Right.
It's very and then the part that's my favorite part, that's the part that doesn't work. But I go, and then arsonists, of course, tell you they left a note.
I like that.
Yeah, doesn't really work, but
no, I like that. I wrote this down. I've been writing a bunch of jokes about drugs recently because it is we used to do the D.A.R.E program when we were kids, 6th grade.
Yeah, of
the
course.
cop come in and we dare you not to do drugs. And we're like, wait, will you dare us to do drugs or to not do drugs? And they're like, to not do drugs. It's an acronym. We're like, what's an acronym? They're like, don't worry about it. Don't do drugs. Right? And I wrote this down, but before D.A.R.E, I hadn't considered using drugs. And then I was like, maybe I should try them out to know for myself. They have fun names: Angel Dust, Sugar, Crank, Boomers. I was like, these sound amazing. Is there a more exciting name than Angel Dust for a 6th grade altar boy at St. Mary's School? That Angel Dust might get me into heaven. While I'm on my way to heaven, maybe I'll crank myself up on some Boomers.
There you go.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a drug joke I tried recently?
Oh, please, yeah.
I recently went back and did a show in Amsterdam where I used to live. and I was talking about how when I wanted to apologize to the Dutch people because when I lived there in my 20s, I did a lot of drugs at their amusement parks. Oh. Because we'd go there, and I said I did hard drugs, and let me just say that's a bad name because they are so easy to take.
Oh my gosh!
Because that's calling acid a hard drug. You're like, you just put it on your tongue, and it's gone.
That's really funny.
So easy. This is just a true thing. I feel like my ears. I never knew my ears were weird until I had to start wearing ear pods because they don't stay in.
That's my favorite of the bunch.
Okay, because now
so
when I wear ear pods, I have to walk like I'm in a cotillion.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Just like, you know those old things where you have to walk with like a fucking book on your head?
Yeah, it changed your posture.
I feel like, I've never tried this. Like, I want to do an impression of an ear pod in my ear and just sit on a stool and be like, this is what happens to the ear pod, where it's literally like, this is me taking a step.
Oh, I like that. Oh my God.
It's that fast.
That's so funny.
All right.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah,
Very good.
keep that in. Also, I'm actually curious, it's just a general question, step out, is you've collaborated with so many joke writers over the years. What do you think is the best quality of a joke writing collaborator? Because people who listen to this show write jokes, they create things, they collaborate.
Never pitch a lateral move.
Nice.
Right?
Love it.
That's Mike Shoemaker note. Never,
Great.
like, nobody likes when you're like, oh, this is equally as funny, but now this one's mine.
Right.
So
smart.
I think it's almost...
In other words, don't take someone's joke and pitch something that's maybe not as funny as that, but it's of the same premise.
Yes.
Okay, so
but
no
then,
lateral moves, and then what's the other
I feel
one?
like it's got to be like, you got to improve it like 50. It's got to be 50% better.
Interesting. Okay, super smart. Here's the other one I had is the slogan in the 80s. One of the slogans in the 80s was hugs, not drugs, but it's a false dichotomy. Drugs result in a lot of hugs.
Yeah.
You know?
You can do both.
I don't think you should do drugs, but if you do, might be more hugs in your future.
It's good.
It's all right.
A lot of people say America's the greatest country in the world. Mm-hmm. I feel like everybody should then have to say what their second one is. Like there's no, like, one data point on a graph is pointless.
Right.
Right? Like, my second favorite is Holland.
Right.
And like Tucker Carlson's is like Hungry. Now we know why we're different. Maybe, right? Maybe.
No, I think that's super strong.
I feel like we made a mistake when we started calling them great grandparents. Because it gave everybody a false sense they were about to meet somebody amazing.
They're going to blossom. Yeah.
But it just means really
Grandpa's about to go big.
Yeah. You got to meet it. Oh, I got a great.
Yeah.
This is a terrible joke that I loved when I wrote, and it doesn't work, which is I grew up loving rap. My wife grew up loving country, and so far country is winning. My kids like country music because my kids like a lot of country musicians, also like trucks. But country music also has, the language is fine, but there's also like some real negative messaging in country music songs. For example, my 7-year-old can't fall asleep unless he has a half bottle of whiskey. And
that's a great joke.
My, according to his kindergarten teacher, my 5-year-old will not say the whole alphabet because he hates his X's.
That's very funny.
But see, that's the difference. The first one gets a laugh, and the second one gets a collective.
Well, it's funny.
The audience,
I was about to break your rule of laterally pitching. It's hard to not laterally pitch, by the way, because you don't know if something is a lateral pitch until you say it, and then you go,
right.
"Oh yeah,
right."
But like, I literally thought like something with X's, and then you said something with X's. Yeah. But also there's got to be something because there's awful country songs with abuse and hitting and things like that. So there might be something in that universe. The drinking one's great. The whiskey one's great.
X's never works, but it's so good.
But I think it's because it's a de-escalation, I think, of the joke. I think the whiskey one is kind of a thing that a 5-year-old shouldn't do. I think something with physical abuse of a spouse, I think would be a heightening of that. Uh-huh. Stay with me. But I think
you should do it on stage.
No, exactly.
I won't be there.
Exactly.
This might be, I'm now pitching what is probably a better episode of documentary now than an actual joke.
Good.
Which is the guy whose job it is on a movie set to do the crazy drawings they find in a kid's notebook that lets you know there's like ghosts in the house.
Oh, I like that.
You know how they all look the same? It's like really like scribbly.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like apparent, like they all with like eyes are scratched out.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's one guy who's really good in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. And he's like, what is it? It's like, there's a wolf at the window. He's like, I can do a wolf at the window. There's like 1,000 different wolves.
It is a good documentary now.
Yeah, so
I love that. What last thing is working it out for a cause? What's a nonprofit that you like to support?
Sanctuary for Families is an incredible organization that my wife works for, and they focus on women who are victims of gender-based violence. And I've got nothing but great things to say about everybody over there, my wife included. We
will contribute to them. We'll link to them in the show notes. We will encourage listeners to also contribute. Seth Meyers, the legend. It's an honor to have you on the show.
You know what? I had nothing but high hopes for this, and it was just a delight.